First of all, I just want to give my dad a shout out. He ran in the Boston Marathon yesterday in the 60-plus category and finished with an unofficial time of 4 hours, 18 minutes, and 35 seconds. Way to go, Big Al. For those of you who don't know this, my wife and I are very big fans of the TV show How I Met Your Mother. But don't even get me started on how badly they butchered the ending. You spend all this time building up the character for us to meet at the end, and you actually introduce her to us, and we start to fall in love with her.
Can we just focus here right now? Oilers, Chiarelli, pucks,
Yes.
blah, blah, blah.
Thank
Okay.
you, sweetheart. Anyway, earlier this season, Frank Saravelli tweeted out a quote from Oilers general manager Peter Chiarelli. It said, "I'm disappointed. General disappointment. There's your headline." And I responded with a How I Met Your Mother meme of Ted and Robin saluting. This seemed to catch on, and many angry fans began referring to Chiarelli as general disappointment. I wasn't too pleased with this at the time. But over the course of the last few months, I've come to the realization that Peter Chiarelli is not the manager that's going to lead the Oilers to the promised land. Now, if there's one thing I absolutely cannot stand, it's being pigeonholed into a specific group of people. There are some loud, obnoxious, vulgar people who have a serious hate on for Peter Chiarelli. And they have a tendency to embellish and just flat out make things up in order to add extra ammo to their argument for his dismissal. So I've found it very difficult to voice my displeasure with Peter this season because this camp quickly latches onto your words to support their viewpoint, and I just don't want to be associated with that. So I say all that so that I can outline my thoughts on Chiarelli very clearly.
Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood.
I'm going to start with what I like about Chiarelli. Him and I see eye to eye on the framework for building a team. If you've watched my videos since the beginning, you know my stance on how the team should be put together. I view the core of this team as McDavid, Draisaitl, Nuge, Klefbom, Nurse, Larson, and Talbot. Centers, D, and goal. I know Chiarelli views the team the same way, as he said as much in his latest presser. So, in my opinion, he has never traded a core player from this team. Hall, Eberle, and Yakupov are all guys that I never lumped in with that group of players. Now, if you counted them as core players, I can understand your anger and resentment. I'm talking to you, Dave Graham. I know there are a lot of people that criticize Chiarelli for trading left-winger Taylor Hall, saying he traded MVP candidate Taylor Hall for second-pairing defenseman Adam Larson. Did he? Did he? No. He didn't trade away an MVP candidate. He traded away a player who faded down the stretch of his final season with the Oilers, proclaimed he didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel in his exit interview, had a self-pity party all season. His former Oiler teammates took numerous runs at him when they played, including Patrick Maroon, who mocked his trademark goal celebration, openly rooted against the Oilers in the playoffs, and led his team to another draft lottery win. My question for people who say that Taylor Hall has played at this level, this MVP level before in Edmonton, why did he never carry them into the playoffs or even remotely close like he did this year with the Devils? I mean, take a look at New Jersey's roster. He finished 40 points ahead of his next teammate. It's not like he had a better supporting cast than some of his days with the Oilers. No. The only logical explanation is that he finally grew up and started leading his teammates both on and off the ice, and finally became the player he was projected to be when he was taken first overall back in 2010. My only criticism of Chiarelli on this trade, and it includes all of his trades involving immature young players, is I would rather see him and the coaching staff straighten a player out get them playing like a pro, playing a team game, then trade them away. Because that is what happened in New Jersey. Hines sat him down and held him accountable as a leader on the team. It's harder work, but it's worth it. I'll have more on that aspect of Chiarelli later on. Secondly, I also agree with Peter's view of how the team should play. Again, you can go back and watch old videos of mine, but I have maintained for a while that it doesn't matter how fast your players are if you don't play with pace. The Oilers fiddled around with the puck a lot this year, which just helped reinforce the narrative that they're a big, slow team. They are not. Lucic is the only guy currently on the roster who skates slowly. This overflows into coaching issues with the team this year, so I'll leave it at that for now. And finally, I appreciate that Chiarelli came in with a plan to turn things around. Now, I think this is the perfect place to transition to my problems with Chiarelli because I feel there's a lot of middle ground here for discussion. Prior to him coming to Edmonton, the Oilers were a rudderless ship, just waiting for things to turn around on their own. He immediately came in and tried to address the enormous deficiencies on defense and in goal. But at the same time, he had an awareness that things weren't just going to turn around instantaneously. It was going to take time to properly get things going in the right direction. From everything I've read and heard over the last 3 years, he viewed the Oilers' progression going something like this. His first year, he took a lot of time to assess the players he had because he came from out east and he needed to see firsthand what he actually had. Unfortunately, the team wasn't healthy all year. He pictured them as an 80-point team, but they finished with 70. A lot of growth happened on the team, though. Their work ethic and attention to detail improved greatly. His second year, I think the goal was to build on the previous year and just make the playoffs, just end the drought. The Oilers did as well as myself, or I think anyone possibly could have expected, getting home ice in the playoffs and coming oh so close to a conference final appearance. This year, many experts picked the Oilers to make it to the Stanley Cup final, and some of them even picked them to win the Cup. My dad said to me in January that he's been watching hockey for 50 years, and he has never seen a team with such high expectations do so poorly. Judging by Chiarelli's off-season moves and his comments on the team, I think his vision was for the team to do about the same as the year before. Instead, they crashed and burned. Now, hindsight is 20/20. I don't like that expression, but it's true. The Griffin Reinhart trade wound up being his worst move as manager. But at the time, it was so refreshing to me to see that he wasn't just going to sit on his hands like Tambo and Mac T and wait for things to sort themselves out. Looking back now, had he done nothing, the Oilers would very well have a couple of very good players or prospects in the organization. On the flip side of this, I really don't buy into the argument of MVP on an ELC as justification for firing, because I don't think that was ever part of the plan. I think that they wanted to be contending by this year and then make a serious push in years 4 through 7 of McDavid's career. And I agree with that. Slow and steady wins the race. I remember reading at the beginning of this season that this year was the Oilers' best shot at winning a Stanley Cup with McDavid. The guy's 21 years old. Imagine for a moment that Chiarelli had sacrificed assets to go for it this year and the team had missed the playoffs. Because that's what the Flames did, and the Islanders have 2 shots at first overall because of it. I know there's going to be a lot of comments on these particular topics that I've just covered. Now, like I said, I agree with Chiarelli's plan. The problem is, I don't think he's capable of carrying it out. See, over the course of this season, I've been coming to grips with the fact that Chiarelli is a poor negotiator. Whether this be in making trades or signing contracts. I'm not sure what approach he is taking, but he certainly doesn't seem to be firm but fair. He doesn't get full value in his trades, and he overpays slightly in all of his free agent signings. In the long term, this adds up big time. Being taken advantage of in his negotiating, as well as his tendency to move out players with attitude problems, leads me to believe that he is very non-confrontational. As a general manager, that's a really bad trait to have. Considering some of the bozos that are probably whispering in his ear, that could explain a lot. When you are consistently getting bad advice, you need to be able to say no to those around you and do things the way you feel is best. Now, I was on board with keeping Chiarelli around because of his strong draft record. I really like what he's done in his time with the Oilers, especially in the later rounds. But as I began to research his draft history, I came to a startling discovery. See, I've been in the position before where I've been writing a blog and I started checking some facts, and I saw right away that some of these things that I'm wanting to point out don't actually line up with the facts that I come across in my research. So I've had to admit I was wrong about that and change my opinion. And that's what happened here. Seeing Pastrnak, Donato, and Heinen play well for the Bruins this year, 3 picks from Chiarelli's last draft in Boston, gave me the impression that he's always had a solid draft record. I thought that when Chiarelli took over the Bruins, he hit a home run at the 2006 draft, taking Kessel, Lucic, and Marchand. But that's wrong. Peter Chiarelli was named Bruins general manager on May 26th of 2006. However, Jeff Gorton remained interim GM until July 15th. He's the one that drafted those players. And he signed Chara and Savard. He was also the one that made the Andrew Raycroft for Tuukka Rask trade, a deal that is still biting the Leafs in the butt today. Add to that the fact that Bergeron and Krejci were already in the organization, and suddenly the players he acquired for the 2 cup runs mainly seem like periphery guys. For me, it's not the Lucic signing. I think he'll bounce back next year. It's not the Russell signing. I think he had a solid season. It's not even the fact that the Oilers missed the playoffs. I feel that even with Chiarelli as manager, they'll get back in next year. My problem with Peter continuing to be the GM is that I don't think he'll be able to outdraft his poor negotiations. Bob Stauffer had a tweet over the weekend likening the Oilers' situation to the Jets. Winnipeg is big, deep, and skilled, and added at the deadline. Legit Stanley Cup contender. Last season, the Jets were banged up on D, had poor penalty kill, power play, and couldn't get a key save. Despite the naysayers, the Jets stuck with the Cheveldayoff-Maurice tandem. Is there a lesson in that? It's true. There is a lesson in that. The problem is that by the time Chiarelli has been around long enough to draft and develop that well, Connor might be gone.
How did it come to this?
I've made peace with the fact that he's going to be the manager of the team next season because, quite frankly, it beats the alternative. And you can watch my previous video to see what I mean by that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Just please try to limit the exclamation marks, cap locks, and profanity. Thanks.